Okay, this is the second one that I'm doing on Derek Johnson and the whole Trump whiteout movement. The first one was more from the constitutional perspective. This one is more from that real conscience or moral conscience perspective, and what it takes to actually, what needs to happen to an individual to override their intuitive sense of what is in alignment with natural giving and what works against it, even while they believe they're being moral while they do it. Because most people who do that have accepted morality from an external ruler, hence the Ten Commandments. Excuse me. So we're going to go into that. So here we go. Hopefully it won't be as long as the last one.
Been saying what Derek Johnson's been saying for 10 years now. It ain't 10 years old. The legislation's not 10 years old. It ain't even that old. And I'm not a law and order guy by laws and orders.
So this is the thing of what moral relativism is. It's where a set of people that you believe have higher authority than you, know better than you, of what's required for people to live together in some kind of order, because without that there would be chaos and entropy. That we need a ruling class to decide for the rest of us. That's all the Ten Commandments are. And by and large, the Patriot movement are all into that, right? So they override their intuitive capacity to understand what actions, and we all have them, because otherwise a baby would never scream out every time something snatched out of its hands. It just wouldn't. We all have that intuitive understanding of when something is, in alignment with our needs and when something is violating them. That's all morality really is. It's real simple. Anyway, you're going to hear him like same as in the last clip. It's the same one that I made. He's going to go talk about how someone else gets to decide what the truth is, and he just follows it, right? Very important to understand the meaning of following an order here, because that's what this is all going to be about.
I'm not a law and order guy. I'm Donald Trump's laws and orders that he's using, that they utilize, that were already in the books, that's been in place, that he's utilizing for this operation.
So that's really important to understand, that this has been written down somewhere, which now makes this some kind of unchallengeable authority. Because at the end of all this, I'm going to play what that actually looks like in real life when people go into that belief, what they're willing to do to one another in order to adhere to that belief as being sanctisanct. I can't even say that word correctly.
Right, so all these haters and trolls out there, they don't even realize President Trump says it. I go by what President Trump says. Everything he says is backed up with legislation, laws, and orders.
So basically, he's saying that everything someone who's part of the whole system that is about dominating, controlling people, that this individual who's speaking about, this Trump guy, that he's just following, the rules based on who wrote them. The same cabal, no different. They're just a bunch of people who get into a position that others believe they have magical powers now, that they're in this so-called position with a title, that they know what's best for everyone else. And as long as we hold to those rules that are scribbled down, that makes us moral people. That's essentially what's happening here. So now we're going to go into the guts of what it means to be someone who follows orders and believes that's virtuous, and what does one get there, and what that means in their brain, what's actually going on inside. So we're going to do a little bit of science, I guess, but real simple science, nothing complex.
This is what happens when the human brain is in a state of balance. On the left, the holistically balanced brain. When it is in a state of imbalance, the neocortex shows a pattern like that.
So I'm just going to introduce, this is Mark Passio. I've put him in plenty of my videos if you haven't seen the other ones I've done. So if you're new to the videos, Mark Passio used to be a satanic priest, and his conscience got the better of him, and he decided he's not going to put his attention into harming others. He's going to put his attention into educating others so we can all get out of this dark cabal system. So he has the inside knowledge of what the mind magicians know and they keep from everyone else. So he's revealing it. Unfortunately, far too many people are ignoring it. So if you're one of those who wants to keep ignoring it, this isn't for you, right? This is only those who care enough to want to know what's being concealed from them, as painful as it is, because most people's attachments don't allow them, or their attachments against the strength of their attachments is when they refuse to actually see things differently to what they've been believing up until this point. And that's where the vitriol comes from. Anyway, if you're willing to see something you from a different perspective, this may have value for you.
That is electrical deadness of the brain. Generally, that form of electrical deadness, of synaptic damage from chronic left brain hemispherical imbalance, is caused by high levels of adrenaline pumping through the central nervous system. Well, when we think about high levels of adrenaline, that brings us to these two groups of people. There is a lot of physical brain damage that has taken place. Make no mistake about it. And I'm going to talk about how the dark occultists who own these people, own them, feel about them, or as you will see, don't feel anything at all about them.
So this is where it starts to get painful, guys, especially if you're a believer in the white hats. There's some kind of virtuous people, etc. They're doing this for the greater good, yada yada. This is where it starts to get painful. This is where the real deep truths start to hurt. So if you're getting that resistance because your beliefs are now starting to be, confronted with some other perspective that you don't want to be able to face, then it's best you just move on, because all you're going to do is you're going to come out with spit and venom. That's it.
As a matter of fact, they are the most mocked individuals on the planet. If you think that they have contempt for the general sleeping public, you haven't seen anything. They call the general public, dark occultists, they have two terms for people that I've only ever really heard them use. They call the general sleeping public the dead. The dead is what they refer to the public. Because their rationale for this is, if you do not have activated thoughts, activated emotions, and activated actions, therefore you are completely unconscious and therefore not truly alive.
So what does it mean by activated thoughts, emotions, and actions? It means that you are the master of your own decisions. You understand the difference between mind control and autonomous thinking. And what I've noticed, those who think they're actually autonomously thinking aren't, and they're not even aware of it. And that's the best part. So that's why you're called the dead, because you don't even know how your mind is controlled. And then once your mind is controlled, your emotions are triggered by those thoughts, and then those emotions trigger your actions. And that's the true nature of the Trinity. Not the Holy Trinity you get, the Christian one. That's not it. This is it. And that's why they've given you the Bible and all those other things to avert your attention where the answers are not. That's the hard stuff to listen to.
And therefore, we may treat you however we wish to treat you. If you think that's bad on how to think about someone, another living being, wait till you hear what they call these individuals. They call these individuals, and from first-hand experience, from their lips to my ears, they call these people our dogs. That is their name for the military and police. Our dogs. I have also sometimes heard them referred to simply as our pets. This is what they actually think of these people, as human pets. Human pets is how the dark occultists view the military and the police. And that can make you as uncomfortable as it gets, but that is the case. That is the truth.
Okay, I cut it off there, but that's just the swastika symbol in reverse from the US Navy base at Conrad Island in San Diego, because I didn't want to get the rest of it, I just wanted to get this bit here. Hopefully that's giving you a base if you're still here with an open mind. Obviously, if you're here just to prove yourself right, this is going to get you to the point where you're going to be incensed and enraged. So unless you get off on that, there's probably no point in you hanging around. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide I've prepared.
I have to be honest with you and tell you, you don't have the proper foundational knowledge and you're not doing the correct things that can lead to a solution.
So here's the reason why these fantasies about, things like the white hat Trump movement, patriot movement, etc., God wins, all that kind of stuff, why this is still in play today is because there's just foundational knowledge that has been hidden from people, and so they'll believe the next best thing, right? And that's some external ruler has a solution for them. But there's a good guy ruler, that's different. Just like the God they believe in is the good guy. It's that same attachment.
You're starting with incomplete grammar, and then you're jumping right to the rhetoric stage of the trivium. You're starting with incomplete knowledge, and you're trying to jump right to worldly action.
So Trivium, if you don't know, there's three aspects to it. Mark Passy does a lot on that. So you've got the grammar, that's the input of information, the data that you get. Then you've got the logic, and that's the way you process it. And then you've got the wisdom, and that's how you take action once you've processed what's fact from fiction. That's just the simplification of it, just if you're wondering what the trivium is. That's the method that was been used in ancient times to be able to discern what is there in reality and what is a belief. And that's never been taught to, I don't know, I've never been taught it. I don't know any schools that do, and there's got to be a reason for that, right? And even your freedom fighters and whatever, you don't hear them talking about it either. So why is that the case, guys? Do they want you to be independent, or do they want you to be dependent?
And that's the problem. You don't jump to worldly action unless you have these factors figured out first. What is the true nature of the problem? What are the underlying causal factors in the realm of causation? The realm of effects we can explore all day long. We could pick apart all of the machinations that are happening in our world. We can look at all the self-inflicted wounds.
So what he's talking about there is you have a look at all the truther pages, right? There's constantly how the sky's falling, all the different ways that all the terrible things are coming down the pike, or what's happened up until this date, you know, the bloodletting, the satanic rituals, you know, the kids that are trafficked, etc., etc. They're just big on that, the jabs, you know, the poisons that have been put in us for hundreds of years now. People are just big on flaming out all those things, you know, really hyping it all up and, oh, look how terrible this is. So while you're stuck on the symptoms, you are no closer to the root cause. And if you can't get to the root cause, those symptoms are going to keep occurring. So if you're fascinating over that and you're fanning that, you're actually part of the problem. That's the tragic part of this entire, what they call freedom movement. And Mark, in another video, I don't have it here, he calls them actually the tyranny awareness movement. So they're aware of the tyranny, but they're not aware of what's required to get freedom, because they just fascinate over the symptoms and never the causal factor.
You know, you could go on with the 3D worldly effects, but those aren't the causal factors. You have to get to the realm of causality, where the underlying reasons, the why, is at, before you can actually treat the symptoms. We're not here to just endlessly treat symptoms. We're here to solve the problem from the causal level. If you don't understand that, you need to understand the difference between the causal realm and the realm of effects. Go back into my former work, Anarchy in the Occult, where I explain that. So let's jump in. Understanding the nature of the problem. I call this getting to the heart of the problem. The fundamental nature of the problem of human slavery is that most human beings do not have a full and accurate understanding of true, objective morality and natural law.
And that's really critical, right? So many people believe they know morality. What they don't, they know the imposed morality that's come from an external source, not their own inner being that knows it without needing to have it taught to them. You're born with that. And I've actually heard people say this, that if there was no Ten Commandments, that we'd just have this society of total chaos. Well, we have the Ten Commandments, and what do we have? A society of total chaos. So this is the trick. You know, people cannot see the actual truth as it is. They believe that, you know, someone needs to teach them morality. They don't know it innately. So that means that you must believe that you're, if that's the case, that humans are fundamentally evil, and they must have the morality imposed on them. That is sickness number one right there, right? Because that means that every single infant that you've ever seen born, right, is just born evil. If you actually believe you have to have a morality imposed on you, that you don't come pre-stamped with knowledge of it. And this is the difference. And natural law is connected to that. And very few people know how it works. Just like when people come in and they spit out all this venom and vitriol when I start putting up truths they can't handle, right? I reflect the mirror back to them of what it feels like. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. So I do to them what they're doing to me, right? So they get the experience of it. And that's when they can't handle it. They lose it. They actually think that this is like all about putting people down, instead of understanding, no, it's showing you the mirror. It's showing you get back what you put out. And if you don't like it, why do you initiate with it, right? These are fundamental principles people don't understand about natural law, because if they did, they'd never start the way they do. And so these are the people we call patriots, by the way, right? The ones who most people believe that they're being moral. They ain't. They're not even close to it. And this is why we're enslaved. It's not the majority that we call sleepers or normies. It's the people who believe they're awake who are still being immoral because they don't know objective morality. What they do know is someone else's version of it, right? Where you must bow to a master. I mean, it's the first thing it says in the Ten Commandments. That's not morality. That's immorality.
That's the nature of the problem. Ignorance. Ignorance of what? The two most important things that one must hold knowledge of, which is actually held close to them by the dark occult. They don't want this information truly getting out. That's why they've conquered and perverted religions. They've conquered and perverted any fraternal lodge systems, etc. They don't want true morality getting out, the understanding of true, accurate, objective morality getting out to the public, because that's what can level the playing field and end their control. As simple, as even oversimplified as that sounds, that's the correct answer. This is the nature of the problem. The bulk of the human species does not understand morality and natural law. If that is corrected, we will be able to manifest true freedom. If that continues to remain the case, that humanity remains, the overwhelming bulk of human beings remain ignorant of objective morality and natural law, true freedom cannot ever manifest.
So if you think this Derek Johnson and all this Law of War manual stuff that he's promoting is the answer and the solution, that means you are forever giving up your own sovereign power to be ruled by some other so-called godlike figure. That's the problem here, guys. It's not whether there's good guys or whatever coming. It's like, how much do you understand of why that's even in play, that that's a choice for us, right? And how responsible are you for believing in such a system and making it legitimate as to why it's even in play? That's the inner work that's required. That's what this is all about. And unfortunately, Derek Johnson, he's not done that inner work, because if he was, he wouldn't be doing any of this stuff, promoting things that have got to do with moral relativism. Just never would be. He never would have joined the military. I'm going to show you a bit more about who the military are. That never would have been a personal decision of theirs.
Can not. Not only will it not, it is not possible to manifest that condition by cosmic law. So the ignorance of objective morality and natural law leads human beings to erroneously believe that human behaviors that are based in the concept of authority are morally legitimate and acceptable. Listen to what I said again. Ignorance of objective morality makes people believe in their own mind that behaviors that are based in authority are perfectly morally acceptable. Is that not the case? Is this not the very simple logical fact of the matter? People worldwide, in the bulk of human civilization, still today in 2023, don't know what the simple difference between right behavior and wrong behavior is, folks. That's the fundamental nature of the problem. People don't know. Worldwide, people don't know what the difference between right and wrong is. I want you to hear that deeply and let it sink into your brain, let it sink into your mind. That's the fundamental nature of the problem. Yet, how many people percentage-wise are saying this to people?
So great point, guys. How many of your so-called freedom leaders are actually talking about objective morality in its true form, not its imagined one? I don't hear it. I can't think of it. A single individual, aside from people like Mark Passio and Larkin Rose and people in that sort of ilk, that actually do that. And they're only a small representation of people who really know what freedom is. The rest are just pushing people back into slavery. Whether they're doing it deliberately or not, that's too hard to prove. The bottom line is that it's still happening, and that's what really matters. So now we're going to go into getting a deeper understanding of who the military actually are.
Order followers. These are the people who keep the system of slavery in place. Okay? They're the people who keep the system of slavery in place. Let me just say this again. Order followers are the people who keep the existence of slavery in place. Not the ruling class, not the masters, not the so-called elite, which aren't the elite of anything but the bottom of a trash can. Okay? The people
who keep slavery in place are the people who willfully follow their orders. Nobody wants to hear that. And people will hate you for saying it. Following orders means, by definition, doing what you are told to do without judging for yourself whether or not that action that you are being ordered to carry out is actually right or wrong. That's the definition of following orders. I mean, can anybody refute that? Is that not the actual definition of following someone else's order? By definition, you're not, if you're following the order, you're given the order and then you just act, you just do it. Because you're following the order. You don't sit there and go, is what that person told me to do right? Do I have a right to do that? Is that moral? Should I do that because, it's okay and it doesn't hurt somebody else? Or should I not do that because it actually does cause harm? It's not what an order follower does in their mind. An order follower says, yes, sir, and follows the order. That's why it's called an order follower. That's why it's called following an order. So that's the definition of what an order follower is. It's not my perception of what an order follower is. It's the actual definition of order following. Okay? If an individual, this is key to understand, if an individual is performing the task of following orders, by definition, that individual cannot be exercising conscience. Since, by definition, exercising conscience means that one is willfully choosing through their free will for themselves right action over wrong action. So the concept of following orders is completely polar opposite to the concept of exercising conscience. You cannot be doing the same things simultaneously. It's impossible.
Now, I just want you to stop and reflect. Any moment throughout your history of being alive on this planet, have you ever been told to do something where there was some inner resistance? Something felt really uncomfortable about, going ahead and carrying out what you were told to do. Well, that is when you suppress your moral conscience. And I'm willing to bet that every single individual listening to this, if they're deeply honest in their quietest moments, can actually pinpoint themselves doing that. So that's what you cannot change. That's an action, and most people will carry something around that. It could be remorse, it could be guilt, it could be shame, I don't know. It could be something to do with something feeling uncomfortable about it. The thing is, if you don't learn from that and you keep doing it, that's the biggest issue. And people who join the military and the police don't learn from that. They just keep doing it. That's the difference, is that willful, continuous refusal to actually listen to their moral conscience. So then they dig their holes even deeper. So that's who you support when you support people who act in the name of authority. You are supporting people who willfully, continuously override and disavow their moral conscience.
To do those two things simultaneously. They are contradictions in terms by definition. Okay? Most people don't grasp that. Okay? By definition, if you're following orders, you cannot be actually exercising conscience, which involves free will choice based on the knowledge of right and wrong.
Okay, so hopefully that's helping clear it up for anyone who's been a bit muddled about this. If you made it this far and you're still, a Trump lover, white hat lover, I guess you're just building a more of a, what would you call it, an ammunition base for how you're going to spit out venom. That's probably the only reason why you're still here. So we're just going to go into, I think it's something I've seen off quotes. So let's see if that's right. I've got some quotes up. Yep. So this is what anyone who believes that other people that get elected, let's call it elected, into power have the right to do, right? They get to hide behind this thing called the state or government, and then whatever it is that they write out in their decrees, that's like above anyone else. And so the state calls its own violence law, but that of the individual a crime. So if you are part of the conglomerate of state, whatever you do is above what the individual can do at that natural law level, right? And anytime you do that, you have an imbalance of power. And when there's an imbalance of power, you are going against the natural order of life. So there's always going to be chaos and violence. That's the trick of the mind. People who still believe that you need authority to keep society in order do not understand the natural balance of life. You cannot take or give to a group of individuals that which the individual does not possess on their own. That basic principle. And so the thing is that the people who are so deeply indoctrinated, it doesn't matter how much logic you present, that won't change anything because they have an emotional attachment to their indoctrination. So unfortunately, the majority of the Patriot movement are still deeply indoctrinated to believe that they just need to get their flavour of tyrant in the throne, to sit on the throne, and then everything will be hunky-dory because they don't understand the natural balance of natural law. That's what Mark was saying earlier. You need to understand true objective morality and the way natural law works, and the balance that's required for no one to be above anyone else. That's the natural balance of life. If you have a moral conscience, you cannot be superior to anyone else. It's not possible because you share the same conscience. You know when you're doing something is violating someone else's needs for free will choice. You know that because your inner compass will fire off some kind of deep, unpleasant feelings, and your nervous system will start escalating. And then it's the mind games you play and the mental gymnastics you do that play that down. That's how people come to get to a position where they elevate themselves in importance over others. And the other one is, this and no other is the root form which a tyrant springs. When he first appears, he is a protector. So what's the whole game that's been sold about Trump, right? What did he say? He's going to give back power to the people. How do you give back something to people which you never owned? I mean, that's your first trick right there. Right, so, and now he's shaping himself up to like he's there for you. Like, that doesn't exist. If you're in a position of a differential advantage over others, that's already bent sideways. So, that's the part that's not being understood. Like, this is some kind of benevolent act. People don't get in a position where they own others and then just go, oh, well, I've just had enough of that. Yeah, have it back for yourself. That doesn't happen. It actually sickens the soul when you do that, when you're already in that position. Very difficult. Very rare have I seen anyone do that voluntarily without it being taken from them. That's why freedom needs to be taken for yourself. It's never given to you. You'll hear that. Most patriots will say that, or people that identify as patriots. All right, one more thing. This is the actual one I wanted everyone to see. I would really recommend you slowing this down or stopping and pausing and listening to it because it's really quick, but there's so much detail in here about the true nature of events, of how we live today, based on what we've just gone through here.
Though the degrees of extremism may vary, its adherents' proud obedience to the God of authority remains the same. They believe their God, government, has rights they do not, the right to control others through violence. Its agents are not subject to basic human morality. Unlike us, they can steal, they can kill, and they can brutalize you for refusing to believe in this double standard and accept that it's for your own good. Like other religions, faithful practitioners of statism, where the state reigns supreme, bow to sacred texts, exalted symbols, and deified origin stories, and they engage in cyclical rituals to prove their faith and secure the riches they think their government God guarantees, even when their religious leaders fail to deliver on those promises. Like any effective religion, its authorities drive its tenets into children's heads from a young age, forcing them into schools where the suppressive, violent, control-based ideology is presented as civilization and freedom and the only possible reality, one that becomes conflated with their most basic human identity and where memorization and regurgitation, compliance and conformity are valued above all else. This brainwashing is so effective and the cultish fixation on the power of authority so great that true believers react frenzied and angrily if you question their perceived prophets or their interpretation of their religion, or government forbid the legitimacy of their God altogether. But while there may be different interpretations of authority worship, followers' faith in it is unshakable, and they believe not only that they must force it on the infidels who don't share their specific ideology, but also that they are free because their God allows them to do so. They believe it's moral to threaten others into the sacrament of submission. As long as they perform their rituals, pray to the right religious leaders, and don't break their rules, they will be saved. No matter how many times this proves to be a lie, and no matter how cruel their God reveals itself to be, they continue to believe. It is a repressive religion, criminalizing nonviolent, victimless behavior while approving of other destructive vices, simply because their holy texts, laws, written by mortals but kissed by pseudo-sacred authority and enforced at the barrel of a gun, say so. Followers believe the government has the right to control a wide range of behavior and that as faithful practitioners, they can use this status God and their religious masters to force their views on others who don't consent. And even when adherents don't agree with certain laws, they nevertheless submit because they faithfully bow to the God of authority. These rules inevitably require violence to enforce, and those who refuse to comply, even if they aren't hurting anyone, ultimately come face to face with the weapons of the enforcement class for questioning its superiority. If they don't get the barrel of a gun jammed in their face, the fact remains that the state asserts its right to use violence if it wants, while its true believers deny this violence even exists, calling it consent of the governed or majority rule or the social contract. When every representative they elect and every law that's passed hold their power because of an enforcement class that will aggress against others to ensure obedience. Those who wield the weapons and impose the violence for the institution are deemed heroes and martyrs. They receive special status and privilege and respect for fighting the sinners, the infidels, the non-believers. The effectiveness of this indoctrination leads otherwise good people to kill on its behalf for con man profits and others to rationalize it and advocate it, even if they don't commit it themselves. This fetish for authority and obedience to their God has led its soldiers to die for the state, to kill more human beings than any other religion in the history of the planet, and the deaths keep mounting while people excuse it in blind faith.
So there you have it, guys. That's what your Derek Johnson, the one you think is all there for the people, that's the roots of his basic belief systems. It's been explained to you, not the best way I possibly can, but hopefully there's enough in there. And now you can make up your own decision, if you're still here, with an open mind that is, as to do you want to support any sort of system which is based on structural violence, where one individual is elevated in importance over another just because they hold a title or of some illusory thing that doesn't exist in nature, like government, right? That's the root of all evil, is that belief that someone else has the right to rule, because without that we will have chaos, and there's no greater chaos that exists because of that belief. And until each individual starts seeing it for what it is and have a dispassionate connection to the objective truth, this cycle is going to keep continuing. So it's less about whether what's going on is, like these two factions of the same cabal, duking it out as a turf war. That's most likely what it is. It's less about that. It's more about you as the individual claiming your sovereign right to understand the truth, because you want to, not because it makes you comfortable, but because it is, and that's the only way to freedom. Now, if you want to know more about how you can get more info on that, I'm about to show you where. Okay, so if you're looking to find some kind of guidance about moral principle, and that there is actually a structure in place that was built on moral principle, where the system of governance, which just means system of public servants and administration of how services will be delivered to the people equitably in order to advance the quality of all lives equally. This site has got plenty on it. I'm just going to quickly, I'm not going to go too much into it because I've done plenty of other videos about that, but here we go. It's already standing on principle. You can see that unifying our community. It talks about the 1901 Australia Crime Punishment Manifesto, which is the 1901 Commonwealth of Australia Constitution. So it talks about why that's a fraud and how that's just more enslavement. And then you've got participate in our police letter campaign. If you want to do that, you can click on that, take you right there. Subscribe to the mailing list. As you go back up here, you can see all the different places you can look into. And so anyway, that's for you to discover in your own time, but just giving you a resource. It's magnacarta1215.com. There you go.